Hello everybody, and welcome back to our Bloomburrow set review. As always, we've got Yanks on the call. Welcome, Yanks.
Good to be back.
Today, we're going to be going over every single black card in, just like mono black card in Bloomburrow, giving it a rating between 1 and 10 based on how we feel it will perform in the average limited deck. If you guys missed Introduction to Bloomburrow, that's the most important one where we go over new and returning mechanics and draftable archetypes. That's the information we will use to sort of address our ratings here today. So go hit that up, but also White and Blue is already up and probably everything else as well. So ready to go, Yanks?
Yep, let's get started.
All right, Agent Blade Assassin, 2 mana for a 1/3. Whenever it attacks, defending player loses a life, you gain a life. It's also a lizard assassin. I like it. That's pretty fine for a 2-drop.
And I like that it plays into a couple different archetypes. Black-red is lizards, but it also focuses on sort of like a bloodthirst type, defending player loses life mechanic. But it's also nice in Orzhov because it cares about you gaining life.
There are cards that will trigger when you lose and when you gain, so this would trigger both sides of that.
Most of those are if you lose or gain, right? This is them losing and you gaining.
Okay, it was Rakdos that did the if they lost life.
Yep.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay. So this plays very well in both of those decks. Lizard theme, sure. Was lizards a theme? Yeah.
That was the Rakdos.
Rakdos.
Creature pair.
Huh. I like that this doesn't have to get through to like make those activations. This is, for a common 2-drop, this is pretty exciting as far as synergy goes. I think that this is a good card I'm not likely to cut. Probably 5.5.
Right around there, I had it as a 5.
Yeah, that's what I was debating between, but I like it. Bandit's Talent.
1 and a black for a class. Level 1. When Bandit's Talent enters, each opponent discards 2 cards unless they discard a non-land. Pay 1 black mana to go to level 2. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, they lose 2 life. And then to go to level 3, 3 and a black. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards in hand.
This is interesting for Commander, but for Limited, I still like it, but I don't think it's great.
No, 2 mana for... It's not quite Mind Draw because they can just choose to discard 1, but at least you know you're getting a spell then.
Yeah.
Is fine. It's going to be tricky to get the other 2 things to work because it's not like it continually forces them to keep their hand low. It only hits their hand once.
Yeah, well, it'll depend if we see things like, the rat that, like, makes you discard when it comes into play. And also just late game, if this is a slower format, the level 2 could be quite useful. Like, I won a lot. What was it, Ashiok? It was like an uncommon planeswalker from, like, War. Had a similar static ability. No, it was Davriel.
No. Okay, yeah, I'd say Ashiok was the no search, no discard.
Yeah, so Davriel had a similar idea where it was like if their hand was low, it pinged them. I definitely won games with that. It puts them on this really weird, awkward clock, and I do love cards like that. And the first chapter is just like what helps get you to that mark.
Sure, and it's a pretty low cost to get to that level 2. Level 3 is expensive, so who knows if you're going to be using that very often, but you're right, level 2 can put them on a clock.
Yeah, the idea that level 3 is expensive is not a thing that bothers me as much as you, because it's just like it's there until you have the turn off, until you run out of cards, until you have excess mana. So that does not like bother my rating situation too much, especially if the static and the level 2 are both reasonable on their own, to where I can just sit on this forever until I'm like good and ready. That said, it's still like a very kind of do nothing for a while sort of mechanic. I squeeze them in when I can, but they're usually not great. So on its own, I'm going to say this is like a 4. It's like filler at best.
Exactly. 4 is where I have it too.
All right, next up we have the Bonebind, 2 mana for a Squirrel Warlock Bard. Let's go. 2/2. You can pay 4. Exile it from your graveyard. Return another target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. This is while it's in the graveyard?
Yeah.
Whoa, this seems nuts. I didn't mean that because it was a squirrel.
I think it's good. We've seen cards in recent sets that have some sort of decent impact from the graveyard.
This is huge. This is very good. It's a curve filler that like helps you in the late game. Let's just card advantage. I'm very, very high on this.
I'm
6.
happy enough with this card just because it's like you said, it can play in the late game for a 2-drop, but I'm not that excited about it. I think I'm like 5.5.
Next up.
Bone Cache Overseer, single black mana for a 1/1 Squirrel Warlock. Tap, pay a life, draw card. Activate only if 3 or more cards left your graveyard this turn, or if you've sacrificed the food this turn. So basically, activate if you've foraged.
Nice to note that you don't have to forage. You could just sack a food,
Sure.
which could be relevant. Like if you are trying to make that happen. I've seen a lot less forage cards when we were skimming through the set than I saw like other things. You might just have this like in your life gain deck as well.
Yes, yeah. Or if you can reasonably activate it, it's nice for Orzhov to trigger your caring about losing life cards.
Yep. Rating wise, it's a 1-drop, and you have to have the ability to forage or find food. So the average deck not going to be super excited about this. This is kind of Golgari Uncommon Signpost, if that makes sense. But in the deck that wants it, I think it'll be good. And it's a relevant creature type in that deck. So let's say it feels like it's a split rating card, but I'm just going to give it the credit and act like you want it in your deck. So then when you want it in your deck, it's probably a 6.
Interesting. I was kind of going the other way. Like, vast majority of decks don't want this, so I'm just going to say it's like a 3.
Yeah, so that's the problem, right? When it's hard to evaluate cards that are specific to archetypes and just rate them poorly all the time. So I have sort of taken the opposite approach of like giving it the rating for the deck that it wants to be in, because that's when you're considering this. You're not really considering it otherwise. I think it is a split rating, but it's just not powerful enough to give it an official split. So I think you'll know when you want this, and when you want it, it will be good. But you're right, it doesn't get played in 8 out of the 10 decks.
Yeah, and I still think it's only okay in the deck that wants it.
I think this will be really good. Not, I mean, obviously it's an uncommon, right? It's not like a
Sure,
banger, but
sure.
I think you'll want a high quality mass amount of squirrels. I think you will have a high amount of food and foraging, and getting to turn each of those into an additional card draw. I don't think it'll take too long for this to give you your value, in addition to just being, you want mass squirrels anyway, so you're doing all of the things. So anyway, 6 versus 3. So that's going to be one of our the biggest difference yet so far in the set.
I think so.
All right, Coiling Rebirth. 5 mana for a optional gift a card for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then, if the gift was promised and the creature isn't legendary, you can create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1. So very good for your like ETBs and such.
5 mana is kind of around where we see this effect nowadays anyway, even without the optional gift. I think this card is fine with ETBs, but also with good static abilities that you can get a second copy of.
Yeah. There is Surveil in these colors, which helps. It is a little bit of a nombo with Forage. I'm less interested in doing graveyard stuff when my deck is built to also remove my graveyard to make my other cards relevant, but I think this is fine. I think these are usually playable, so I'm going to say it's a 5.
5 seems about right.
All right. Next up.
Consumed by Greed. 1 black for an instant with gift a card. Target opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. If the gift was promised, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand.
Great. I like the flexibility of it. If you have something worth that you would be willing to trade a card with them. It's not card advantage, but it's very optional. Like a random card off the top of their deck is only going to be worth so much, whereas like the best card in a very long grindy game in your graveyard, probably much better.
And if your graveyard doesn't have anything good, you just don't do it.
Yeah.
So
You have that nice flexibility.
it's a nice kill spell. I mean, sacrifice effects are always a little iffy, but at least when they specify the greatest power, it means you're going to get something
Decent.
good. Maybe not always exactly what you want, but they can't pitch in 1/1. They can't pitch an offspring token to this.
Yeah. So probably 6.5.
I like that. Yeah.
I could see going to a 7 if you have like high powered cards in your graveyard or in your library.
Makes sense.
All right, next up, we have 2 mana for a sorcery. You can gift a card. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card. If a gift was promised, you may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled with mana of any type. The gift resolves first, too, so you're just giving yourself more options to peek at their hand, which is kind of cute.
Sure.
That is nice. I don't usually like cards like this because there's such a dead draw late in the game. And double black is tough.
I mean, at least they're technically never empty-handed with this card. Because you can always give them a card.
But I don't want to give them a card and then it's like a land, or even not a land. Like, that still doesn't seem like worth a slot in your deck, right?
No, that's like certainly a very poor case for this card. It's just at least it has that compared to other discard spells that can be literal dead.
I like the ones where they say like, if you can't, you draw a card instead.
Sure.
I think that's a
definitely
better mechanic for this situation. I am not interested in this. I think this is a sideboard card. If I know that my opponent has a lot of good stuff I'm interested in taking. Like, I would run this in Modern Horizons because everything's a goddamn 8-drop. And you're going to get some, like, sweet stuff because the games go long and hands stay full. But I don't think that's going to be true for the average set. So I'm going to say this is a 2.
That's probably right. I think if we see that the format is pretty slow, then this will get certainly better. But we don't know that yet.
Even if it's slow, I feel like most of the... At least in the first 2 colors, like the creatures and stuff were not insanely high impact. There's not a lot of haymakers, if that makes sense, that you're trying to catch them out on. So next up, we have the Dagger Fang Duo. The Rat Squirrel combo has Death Touch and is a 3/2 that says when it enters, you may mill 2 cards. So it's going to help you with your forage and your like recursion stuff. It's an okay rate. I don't know why we have a Death Touch 3/2, but fine, I guess.
I think they've figured out that you didn't need to put 2 like mechanics, like non evergreen mechanics on this because the mill fills both blue black and blue green. So they was like, what keyword is shared between black and green? Oh, Death Touch.
Yeah. I think it's a filler card. It's going to enable some of the things you're trying to do, but this is probably just a 4 for me.
Agreed. 4 seems just about where this should go.
Dark Star Augur. 3 mana for a 2/3 with Offspring and Flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal a top card of your library and put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to its mana value. That's a lot less scary in this set than it is in others because we have food and an entire life gain archetype.
Agreed, and I'm still playing, Dark Confidant in every set, pretty much.
Now, that said, I would be real hesitant to cast the Offspring.
Agreed.
This is the one time we have a low Offspring, and I don't really think I want to cast it.
Probably not that often. It's an interesting sort of strategic spot or decision you have to make because there will be the times where you want it, but it feels like most of them you're right. It's like, yeah, I'm always going to want to do this if I can. Maybe not here.
Yeah, I didn't see that many. There was like one life link creature in white, and that's where I would expect to see them. If I have a high volume of like gain life multiple time triggers, then I'm interested, but like, ooh, that seems scary. Rating wise, I still think this is a good card. We're looking at like, I
think I would have this at like an 8.
yeah, I was bouncing between a 7 and an 8. An 8 seemed maybe a little high just because of how slow it is. I'm going to go in the middle. I will hedge my bets and say 7.5. But I do think it's awfully slow. And there'll be sometimes where you just like literally can't play this card.
True. Well, yeah, I think there's just a lot of times where they have to kill this thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, you know, early on turn 3 when you're ahead, you have a lifelinker, absolutely, it's going to be nuts. But there's going to be times where it's like, oh, I'm a little behind, and that's your draw. Oof. That's not good. Dire Sight, 3 mana for a sorcery, surveil 2, then draw 2, and you lose 2 life. That's going to enable a lot of things. The bonus surveil and the lose 2 is going to trigger your bats in a lot of ways, your forage, and it's pretty typical for what you're drawing with black spells. Seems fine.
It's the surveil version of Read the Bones, which is always pretty good, so
Yeah.
I like it.
6?
Like a 6, yeah.
Great. Next up.
Downwind Ambusher, 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 4/2 skunk assassin. Like the downwind with skunk. It has flash. When it enters, choose one. Target creature an opponent controls get -1/-1 till end of turn, or destroy target creature an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn.
He has to be downwind, otherwise you'll know he's coming. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. They seem to really like putting the second portion of this card, that destroy target creature opponent controls dealt damage this turn, on 4 mana flash 4/2s exactly. I feel like we've seen that a number of times.
Yeah, or sometimes it's like a flying 2/2. Like it bounces around a little bit, but I like the flexibility. The -1/-1. The flash is relevant. It's not too expensive. I like this card a lot, actually.
Well, -1/-1's more relevant here than ever because of Offspring.
Yep.
You know, it's not just a vanilla 1/1 you can kill with this. A lot of times it's a 1/1 with a real ability.
Yeah. I think that this is a real uncommon. I don't think... Yeah, the cost doesn't scare me. I think this is like the first sort of creature I'm excited to pick up for my deck. I don't see the average 4-drop being higher impact than this. So, and like there's so many 1/1s and squirrels that like I feel like in this set, the destroy target creature that's been dealt damage this turn is more real than previously. Because like...
Okay, you can just throw a 1/1 under the bus. And...
Exactly. And sometimes this creature doesn't even have flash. So you've seen it to where it only works on your turn in your combat. You have to trick them into it, which is also a lot harder. So the flexibility here between the flash and the 2 different modal abilities here, I think makes this very, very good. I'm into this card. I think this is like a 7.
Well, slightly lower. I like the card. I'm at like 6.5. I'm saving the 7 for when they power creep this to be destroy target creature and opponent controls that was dealt damage this game.
This game?
Yep, that's probably what's coming at some point.
All right, next up, Early Winter, 5 mana for an instant. You can choose one, exile a creature, or target opponent exiles an enchantment they control. The enchantment is just like a free bonus. 5 mana for an instant exile.
It's a free bonus, but I don't know why they just don't let you just exile an enchantment instead of letting them choose.
It might be
probably
too
something
powerful.
to do with it's probably something to do with the flavor of black not being able to easily deal with enchantments, but
Yeah. The other thing too is that like a lot of times we get 4 mana sorcery speed exile or 4 mana, instant, like the power creep here, right? Like eventually we'll get, 5 mana exile anything at instant speed, but it's going to take us 2 more years. That's it.
Yeah, it'll be 5 mana exile target player.
Yeah. First to 5 wins the game. So I think this seems reasonable, and I like your hypothesis of like black not having enchantment removal, and this is like another small version of that. And just power creep wise, it makes sense to me. So I think this is a good thing. This is black's premium-ish removal. Is this just an 8?
Yeah, it's just an 8.
It's a little pricey. Like, there's a destroy at 4 mana instance usually. So I just don't know how much I like the exile in this format. We'll have to see what the graveyard situation looks like.
I think between Threshold and
Yeah.
Forage. I think it'll be relevant often enough.
All right. Next up.
Feed the Cycle. 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, forage or pay black. Destroy target creature or planeswalker.
So it's murder with a discount if you want?
No, Hero's Downfall with a discount. Because it gets planeswalkers.
Oh, fair. Whatever. That stuff's not relevant and limited.
I'm just remembering when Hero's Downfall was like, I can't believe they printed this card. It's a rare. It's amazing.
I do remember those days. This is very good. This is premium removal. Instant speed. I think this is an 8.
Agreed. 8.
Next up, we have Fell. Destroy target creature. Sorcery speed, 2 mana. Whoa. Okay.
Goodbye, Murder. I guess Murder's an instant.
Yeah, this is just sorcery, which is cool. I think this is very good. I don't like that it's sorcery, but it's only 2 mana for just straight up kill anything. Normally, it's like 2 mana, 3 CMC or less or whatever, but like, I don't know. I'm still willing to give this an 8.
Agreed. I'm also kind of surprised that Fell has never been used as a name before.
Fair. Next up.
Glide Dive Duo. 4 and a black for a 3/3 Bat Lizard. Flying. When Glide Dive Duo enters, each opponent loses 2 and you gain 2.
Look at the little lizard with his little hang glider. He's so cute. And the bat has like stabby stabs. Somewhat ritual-y stabby stabs. I think this is adorable.
This has to be the set review on the internet with the most uses of the word stabby stab.
They are so cute. I can't help it. He's got a little cloak. 5 mana for a 3/3 that gains and drains 2. I don't like it. 4.
I don't love the rate. I love that it so neatly fits into both Rakdos and Orzhov, with the Bat Lizards, with triggering both types of abilities. So I like that, but yeah, the rate's not great. You're like 4.5.
In those decks, it'll get some play up, but I think in the average deck, yeah, I'm a little lower than you on it, but even in the Bat Lizard deck, I'm not so excited, so
Sure.
Next up, we've got Hazel's Nocturne. 4 mana for return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. That's nice. I will usually play this. It's usually 3 mana to return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. But then the gain and drain will trigger both of your Rakdos Orzhov stuffs.
Sure, and we're starting to see just a decent amount of random life gain stapled onto things, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Makes that bat a little less scary.
Agreed. Well, scarier for your opponent.
I will typically play these. I think I'm fine to call this a 6.
6 seems fine.
I'm never cutting the first one of these usually.
Yeah, me neither.
Next up.
Husk Burster Swarm. 7 and a black for a 6/6 elemental insect. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card you own in exile and in your graveyard. Mana Stat Touch.
I like that it says in your exile, because what that does is it's stopping you from nomboing yourself with forage, and I appreciate that they kept that and considered it.
I like that they've started building that. They've started considering that a lot. Like, I think we saw back in one of the Ravnica sets, like Crackling Drake, because it was in blue-red, that cared a lot about Jumpstart, which exiled your spell. It didn't want it to be a nombo. Like, I like that they're starting to consider that a lot in design.
Yeah. With Surveil and so many cheap creatures and a lot of recursion stuffs, this card seems really good for an uncommon. I think that this could come out quite quickly and be very difficult to deal with. Like, 6 butt is going to be real hard for red. Obviously, black can deal with it, but, only so many opponents are going to have black cards.
And in combat, it's always at least a 2/4 because of Mana Stat Touch.
Yeah. So I think this card is very good. I don't see myself cutting it in mostly any black deck. So let's say 6.
I'm actually really high on this card. I want to say 7, but I don't think it's quite that good, so I say 6-5.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to be higher on it. It just, there's so much good removal. So we'll see
True.
how much work it does. Next up, an iridescent vine lasher. He's adorable. 1 mana for a 1/2 with offspring and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. I like 1-drop with landfall with a relevant creature type is good. If you get 2 of these, each time you play a land, you're dealing 2 damage for the low price of just 3 mana. I'm very into this.
And you're triggering all the stuff in Rakdos that cares about that.
Yes, it's such a great enabler for everything else for you to do like pre-combat, right? Without needing to get anything into the red zone, you get to activate all those Rakdos cards. Oof. This card seems very good. 7.
7 works for me.
Next up.
Maha, it's Feather's Knight. 3 black for a 6/5 legendary elemental bird with flying and trample. And ward, discard a card. Creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1.
They just have base toughness 1. Kind of have to kill it.
It's a big old threat on its own. And
Yeah.
almost certainly 2 for 1's the minimum because of the ward.
Yeah. Even if you don't talk about any of the other stuff. But there's also a really good chance that you're just playing this in your squirrel deck and now everything they have dies to a squirrel in combat.
True.
Which just makes life hell.
Try to see, do we have any like all creatures get -1/-1 effects in the set?
Well, there's the one, the hasty guy, or the flashy guy.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking like the sweeper
Yeah.
version. But yeah, that's great there.
Rating wise, I think even without the bottom line, this card is still very good.
The target player's a good point. You just basically wipe everything they got into combat with after combat.
Oh yeah, just bounce your like 1/3 off their 2/2, play this or whatever.
That's pretty nasty.
Yeah. This card seems big because of the ward discard a card. I think that is very impactful. A 6 power flyer for 5 mana is going to end games incredibly quickly. Is this a 10? That ward discard a card, I think, is what turns the corner for it.
I think so. Because short of a sweeper, there's no way, or I guess, or a sacrifice effect, there's no way to not 2 for 1 yourself with this card.
And then the other cool thing is that, like Target Player said, when this comes into play, like there's a good chance that you got some value off of the ETB as well, just from the creatures losing their toughness.
Or even if you play pre-combat, like they pass turn thinking they've got the board stabilized, and all of a sudden they lose every combat.
Yeah, they're at 5. They have like much bigger creatures. You play this and you go attack you with 5 squirrels.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, shit. Have to trade with squirrels. That's never a place you want to be at, right?
Exactly.
All right. So probably our first 10. This set doesn't seem super duper like bomby, like those dragons that just come in and like clear the board and stuff like that. We haven't seen those yet. So this has been so far, I think, the highest powered thing we've really seen. All right.
Too bad Airball's not here for the I think he would like the way that card is named. Be some Star Trek episodes that would come to mind.
Probably.
Darmok and Tanagra.
I don't know anything about that stuff. Star Wars fan. Moonstone Harbinger, 3 mana for a 1/3 flying and death touch. Now that's a stat line I like to see on my death touchers. And it says, whenever you gain or lose life during your turn, bats you control get +1/+0 and gain death touch until end of turn. This ability only triggers once. A little bat anthem. I like that. This is going to be quite good in that deck.
I'm seeing...
And even if it's not in that deck, I still like a 1/3 flying death toucher.
Exactly. This is going to be good in any black deck. I'm seeing, so far we've seen 1 instant speedway to gain life in black, which could be...
food.
Should be nasty. And then there's also, food as well.
So rating wise, I think I like this a lot. I'm going to say in the average deck, it's a 6, and in the bats, it's going to play very well.
That works for me.
All right, next up.
Nocturnal Hunger. 2 and a black for an instant with gift of food. Destroy target creature. If the gift wasn't promised, you lose 2 life.
He's so sleepy. There's a little mouse in there, I think.
That's what it looks like.
Aww. 3 mana for an instant destroy a creature. Okay, got an 8. Good job.
I like that the gift is weird here because there are times you're going to want to give the gift to not lose 2 life. The other times you're going to not want to because losing life triggers your Orzhov stuff. Or it's a benefit to lose a life.
Yeah, that's true. Or you're just willing to, or your opponent's playing Orzhov or Forge, and you're like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather take the 2 life, right? But if your opponent's playing like, Selesnya or Azorius, then the food probably doesn't matter. So the flexibility is great.
Agreed.
And for that rate at instant speed, I'm happy to lose 2 life.
Sure. Absolutely.
Osteomancer Adept, 2 mana for a 2/2 Squirrel Warlock with Death Touch. You can tap it. Until end of turn, you may cast creature spells from your graveyard by foraging in addition to paying their cost. If you do, they enter with a finality counter on them. This is a really cool card. I got to play this in the Commander game that actually released today. If you guys want to see the Upgrade Bloomburrow episode, that's already live. And it's doing very well, actually. This is a really good card. The threat of activation here is strong, like, post-combat doing stuff. It's a 2-drop that they kind of have to remove. 2/2 for 2, fine. Relevant creature type with Death Touch, eats their biggest ground creature too if you need it to. I think this card does it all. I'm very, very happy with this card.
Card's very good. Just to keep in mind, you really would like to have a decent amount of food for this card because you don't want to be exiling your graveyard when you need stuff in your graveyard to cast.
Yeah, it depends if the rest of your deck is built around Forge or not. If this is your only card that's foraging and you're playing like not Golgari, you're playing like, Orzhov or like Dimir, right? Those are not going to care about foraging much. Then I'm not too worried. You're going to have an excess amount of stuff, especially with Surveil, to get in there, and you just like, if you bring 2 creatures back, you're pretty happy with this card. I'm very high on it. I think it's going to win games. So I'm going to say an 8.
I've got an 8 as well.
Next up.
Persistent Marshstalker. 1 and a black for a 3/1 Rat Berserker. Persistent Marshstalker gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control. It has Threshold. Whenever you attack with 1 or more rats, if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, you may pay 2 and a black. If you do, return this from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. Super aggressive card.
Yeah. And he also has a stabby stab. Important to note. There is much stabby stab going on here. Whenever you attack with 1 or more rats, if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, you may pay 3. When you do, return this from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. That seems really good, honestly.
It's a strong ability. It's interesting. I guess blue-black, which is rats, is going to fill the graveyard fairly quickly with Surveil because a 3/1 coming back late game a lot of times is not going to do that much. But you can trade this off early and get it back pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it trades up really well. So there's going to be pairings where your opponent doesn't have access to squirrels. And this can just keep doing its thing. And it's going to be huge. If you end of turn kill their blocker and then swing with 3 rat tokens, bring this thing back. Like that could just be a lethal situation for an uncommon that's very synergistic for what the rest of the rat deck is already trying to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's like a haymaker by any means. But we're never cutting this in a rat deck. This is like a 6. In a rat deck?
I think it's a 6. I'm a little down on anything with 1 toughness in this set because of Offspring, where you're going to end up trading this for half a card a decent amount of time instead of a full card.
But it comes back, right? Like that's kind of the premise, is that you're not just trading it for half a card. It is constantly eating a half a card, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't think that kills this card. I think just 1 toughness in general in this set is not that good.
Yeah, agreed. But it is a 3/1 for 2, which is aggressive, And then again, I don't think the 1 toughness hurts it because of that ability. You do have to have other rats. So if you happen to be in
Sure.
like Rakdos lizards or something like, and you only have 1 or 2 other rats, then this is not going to be nearly that good. It's going to be like a 4 or a 6 in rats, basically.
Sure.
This set is a lot more divided because each archetype cares a lot more about creature type. So I feel like almost all of our ratings are either a little too low or a little too high, depending if you're going based on like the average deck or the deck that it belongs in, right? Which is not something that happens for every set review.
Sure. This is definitely interesting that way.
More polarizing power levels. Next up, we have Psychic Whirl. 3 mana for a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards, and then if you control a rat, you get to surveil an additional 2. I like that little bonus. It's makes it better when you build around specific things, but like it's also not insane. That's what I liked about the D&D like die roll mechanic, where it's like it always felt like a little bonus. It never felt like if you failed your roll, you like lost the game. Does that make sense?
It does. I don't mind this from a design standpoint. It just feels so much weaker than all the last few sets where we've gotten Mind Rot plus for everybody.
Yes, this is the weaker of the Mind Rots that we've seen for the last few sets. 100% agree. I just meant from a design point, I like it when they give you these restrictions and give you a little something, but that little something doesn't feel like,
Sure.
oh, I guess I lost the game now because I didn't get it or because they did get it. I hate that.
And it's nice because it means that this will be around in the pack later for you if you're drafting rats.
Yeah. Yeah, these cards are usually Some sets are better than others. I'm going to say that this is a 3. I'm usually not playing the Mind Rots.
I think that's probably right because there are also going to be times where you always want them discarding 2 cards, but where it's mitigated by the fact that you're fueling their graveyard.
Yep. Okay, next up, Ravine Raider. 1 mana 1/1 with Menace. For 2 mana, you can give it +1/+1 till end of turn. Relevant creature type. Very aggressive with stabby stabs. This is a very stabby stab color.
Very aggressive.
The birds were not so stabby. Maybe it was their beaks. Shit, they were stabby all along. Their very aggressive decks are going to want this, but not very many. So, oh, it's got Menace. That's cute.
It's exactly kind of what that Rakdos deck wants to trigger its
hard
ability,
to block.
something that can get in that's tough to block.
Mm-hmm.
But low impact.
4.
4 works.
Next up.
Rotten Mouth Viper, 5 and a black for a 6/6 elemental snake. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may sacrifice any number of non-land permanents. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each permanent sacrificed this way. Whenever it enters or attacks, put a blight counter on it. Then for each blight counter on it, each opponent loses 4 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card.
What? Every time it attacks, it gets a new blight counter, and then you repeat this process, and they lose 4 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card.
It's got like anti-cumulative upkeep. It just gets better every turn.
Holy shiitake mushrooms.
I mean, I'm perfectly happy playing this on 6, but with Offspring in the set, or if you're in black-green with Squirrels, you're going to have things to be able to cast this for 4 pretty easily.
Yeah.
Not mind too much what you're sacrificing.
Or if your curve just
or food.
Or if your curve just tops out, like I would be okay to sack like a land or whatever to bring this out, because this is the top of your curve, and it like fuels your forage. Not all the time, of course, but like late in the game, we're okay with that. But it does it. This is nuts. This is absolutely game winning. It doesn't impact the board the turn it comes out. In fact, it could hurt you.
It does.
Oh no, it's when it ETBs too?
Yep.
Oh my god, I thought it was only when it attacks. Oh my god, you're right.
I want to just kind of put this up there with Maha is a 10.
Yeah. They... Huh. So the first turn it attacks, it does it twice, so you'll get hit 3 times. If you untap with this, it is a 10. I think the first trigger is not quite there for me.
The first trigger you've gotten. Well, I guess you don't always get a 1-for-1 because they could just lose.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you just play it, they take 4, and then they untap, kill it, and you didn't get the same thing that you got with Maha.
Sure.
So it's like, I think this has an easier time to win games. This is easier to block. Oh man, that's tough. I'm gonna go 9.5. I'm mulling it over, but this is definitely a bomb.
That's fair. It's definitely its floor is lower than Maha, but it's more snowbally.
Yeah. For those of you guys who are new to our set reviews, for me, I'm real picky about my 10s, even though this is clearly like a set bomb. The thing for 10s for me is like it wins the game when you cast it like almost all the time, right? So that's going to be cards like Dream Trawler, where it's got like hexproof, draws you a bunch of cards, or cards like Chandra that like when they come out, they board clear and give you creatures. Sure. So you're like constantly getting 2 and 3 and 4 for ones when like it comes out.
Your limited greatest hits, your Jittes, your Pack Rats.
I want to make it incredibly difficult for your opponent to deal with this card, and even when they have finally dealt with it, it has put you in such a commanding position that you're still likely to win the game anyway, and this doesn't quite fit that bill for me. So, I'm not saying it's not good. It's just a 9.5 instead of a 10. But I will certainly lose to this all the time. Next up.
At least unlike Dream Trawler, it's a mythic.
Yeah. Thank God. Ruthless Negotiation. 1 mana. Target opponent exiles a card from their hand. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, you get to draw a card. Target opponent exiles a card from their hand. Flashback. So this is one of the like things that help with like that class card. Remember, like to whittle your opponent's hand away.
Yep.
Snake makes them discard. So that's going to be like a sort of sub-theme archetype that we're seeing in a cool build-around deck that you can do. It is an uncommon, but I don't think the average deck's going to be interested in this in any way. So I'm going to say a 1.
Better. I think it's better than that. I don't think it's great. But it is a built-in 2-for-1. Honestly, 3
2 for 0. Really. It's 2 for 0 built in, right?
Sure, yeah. Eventually, I was saying 3-for-1, but yeah, 2 for 0 is more accurate. So it's expensive to do that, and you may not necessarily get 2 great cards, but any card that has that built in is always at least kind of playable for me. So I think I've got like a 4.
Okay. I think I need to have a little bit more synergy for me to want to do this. I don't usually like spending a whole bunch of... I don't like spending a whole card to like get a land out of their hand and then sit on this for a while. Nombos with some stuff. It's kind of cool if you have like a lot of surveil because you're looking for cards that you can put into your graveyard that will then help you later. So that's neat. But again, I think it's a very specific deck. I don't think I will run this in, 49 out of 50 decks or something.
Okay.
Okay, next up we have Savior to Savor. That's a very different word. 2 mana for an instant. Target creature gets -2/-2. Until end of turn, you get to create a food token as well. Great. Love it. Instant speed, -2/-2. In. Food for forage. In. Life gain for bats. In. 7.
There's nothing wrong with this card. It just feels staggeringly underwhelming after 2 mana kill a creature.
That's why it's a 7 and not an 8.
7 seems... We're not disagreeing on the rating. 7 seems fine. It's funny how it feels so kind of meh compared to what it would normally feel like.
Also want to point out, it has stabby stabs.
That's the real black theme. Stabby stabs.
Yeah. And then look how scared he is. He's so cute.
I
Okay.
don't know if I don't know how scared he is. He's got 2 knives.
Look at him. He's so scared. That's like the scariest. All right.
Okay. I guess I thought that was a mask at first, but no, you're right. That's just him being scared.
Scales of Shale. We have 3 mana for an instant. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each lizard you control. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink and indestructible till end of turn. Indestructible is pretty relevant, and in the lizard deck, this is a split rating, right? Like, this is not 3 mana for the ability is not great, and then when you're in the lizards, like 1 mana for this ability is pretty great.
I'm not touching this card unless I can reliably make this 2 mana and often make it 1.
Agreed. I mean, I will touch it. I will not touch it.
Well, I'll touch it to pass it to the next person.
I'm sure I'm going to be a little bit higher on this than you, but I'm going to say this is like a 3. This is rarely to make the cut, but I think it will sometimes.
I don't know how to call this because I want to say it's like a 1/4 because I'm not touching this. If I have no lizards, I'm not playing this ever.
That's what this set is all about. It's like all the cards are sort of shoehorned into specific archetypes more than we have seen in any other set. So, at least for a very long time. But I agree with your general analysis. Next up.
Scavenger's Talent. Black for a class, level 1. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control die, create a food token. This happens once per turn. Only once per turn. Level 2, cost 1 and a black, and you gain whenever you sacrifice a permanent, target player mills 2 cards. And then for 2 and a black to go to level 3, at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice 3 other non-land permanents. If you do, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it.
Huh. That's pretty good.
So it's nice that it all feeds itself, right? Creatures die, you've got now food token, so you can sacrifice that to make them mill, or you can hold it till you get to level 3 and sacrifice 3 foods or something.
Or you mill, and then you can sacrifice 3 other non-land permanents to return your creatures. Like, yeah, this is interesting. I like the first ability enough for the forage and life gain for bats and things to where I'm already pretty on board. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, mill. So if you have a lot of food, you could kill them. You can enable your forage.
Enable your forage. I mean, if you get to level 3 and you have that, that's mill 6. That's not nothing. I mean, I think this is your first cookie card. Mill somebody out with this.
Yeah, can we just make a bunch of food, level it up, and then we just return 3 creatures and then sack our 3 foods and then mill them for 12 or whatever? I'm here for it. Let's go. Cookie card for sure. I am fine with this for its ability on its own. I don't think it's incredibly high impact, but I don't think I'm cutting this in just about any deck. So 6.
6 is fine. I'm happy with the first ability, and I'm in half the black decks. I'm pretty happy with the second ability.
Yeah. And in all the black decks, I'm fine with the third ability. And it's not too expensive. And
No,
it's good late game. It's slow, but it's pretty impactful.
I mean, this is obviously mostly aimed at Golgari, which has just historically always been a very grindy, long game archetype. So,
or bats. Like, just the first one alone for bats is great. You want repeatable access to life gain triggers, and that's it right there. Each time a creature dies, you get another life gain trigger for your deck. So, next up, we have Season of Loss. 5 mana for the next season card. You get 5 paw prints. You can choose up to 5 paw prints worth of stuff. You can choose the same mode more than once. Each player sack a creature. You can pay to draw a card for each creature you controlled that has died this turn. And you can do 3 paw prints, and you can exile. Each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard.
So a lot of times this is, I mean, if in a stalled board, it's each player sacrifices 3 and I draw 3.
In a stalled board, yeah. Plus, X's creatures in your graveyard, you could just kill them, like in the late game. Even in a stalled board, you might just have like 5-6 creatures in there.
And you could sacrifice 2 first.
Yeah, and then get
So
them
that
for
adds 2.
6 or 8 creatures depending. I think this is good. There's also going to be times where you just don't have creatures and you use this as a pseudo board clear where you can also then ding them for a bunch. Or you have you can have like 6 squirrels, right? And it's like you are massively behind on power. You run your squirrels into them, they eat 3 of them. And then you just make each player sack, you get to draw 6. They lose 3 dragons. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I forgot that it wasn't just a card for each creature that you sacrifice to this.
Exactly. So like even if you are just like if you're the go wide deck and they have stabilized, you just run them into the wood chipper and then sacrifice the rest of them basically. But you get in some chip damage and you get to clear their board and draw, and then you can reset with your squirrels. So this seems really good for like the load the ground wider decks, which I think black will have a bit of, maybe not for the bats, but definitely for the squirrels, for the Golgari.
For sure.
Someone in chat's asking, are there black squirrels? Yes, squirrels is the Golgari archetype. So you'll see each color pairing has different things. So black will have lizards, squirrels, bats.
Rats.
And rats, yes. So however those pairings pair. Yeah, I like it. I think this card is good. It's an 8. I love the flexibility. It can win games, certainly.
Agreed. 8 seems pretty good to me.
All right, next up.
Sinister Monolith. 3 and a black for an artifact. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each opponent loses 1 and you gain 1.
Yeah.
Tap, pay 2 life, sacrifice this, draw 2 cards, activate only as a sorcery.
Yeah. So we are gaining and draining them out. I love this kind of ability. I like to just have these and make them die slowly. Death by 1,000 paper cuts is like one of my favorite ways to win in limited Magic. Triggers your bats, triggers your Rakdos. Isn't card loss anyway, so that's good. Yeah, I'm here for this card. It's a little bit of a split rating you're really not interested in if you're not in Rakdos or Orzhov, but it doesn't hurt you, so 5?
I love that in this set, as opposed to most sets, these sort of drain effects actually work in multiple archetypes. Most of the time it's just, alright, there's a life gain deck, that's what cares about this. But here the fact that it branches out into the Rakdos sort of bloodthirst type mechanic is nice as well. 5 seems right.
Alright, next up, Stargaze, X black black. Look at twice X cards from the top of your library. Put X cards from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You lose X life. So X is 3. So we're going to look at the top 6, put 3 in our hand, put 3 in the graveyard, and we're going to lose 6? Lose 3. That's pretty good.
This card's very good, I think.
Yeah. This is like, I expect to see this in blue. Oh, look at, he's a little bat. Look at the stars. He's so pretty. Oh god, I just love this set so much I can't even handle it.
I think you're probably looking at X equals 2 or 3 most of the time on this card.
Yeah, and I think that's good.
It triggers your Orzhov stuff. It fills your graveyard for Dimir, for Threshold, for Forage. So it's really only Rakdos that it doesn't trigger its mechanic. And Rakdos is aggressive, so a lot of times you have the life to play with.
Yeah. And Rakdos still overlaps with Orzhov, so some of your just like straight up black cards might care about you losing life as well.
True.
So, I mean, it can overlap. So rating wise, 6.5.
That works for me.
All right, next up.
Starlit Soothsayer. 2 and a black for a 2/2 bat cleric with flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you gained or lost life this turn, surveil 1.
See? Like that. It would trigger this.
Yep.
And it's a 3 mana, 2/3 that just has like built-in surveils. If you can like, yeah.
Windrake with Surveil for this color pairs mechanic.
The average deck, a 4.
Sure. Windrakes have just gotten power crept out.
They are not so good anymore. Starscape Cleric, 2 mana for a 2/1 with Offspring, and it has flying. This creature can't block. That's fine. I don't want my little idiots to block anyway. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1. Yes, I like that static very, very much. Especially because of Offspring. Oh, so cute. Ping them to death. All of your food will be relevant. This will be great in Golgari as well, just because you're going to get those triggers. We saw a couple of like artifacts and enchantments that each turn gain and drain you. Even if you're not in the bad deck, I think this is good. 6.
A little lower. I do think this is good, but Offspring 3 just for a 1/1 flyer. Can't even jump anything or trade off for a flyer is awkward.
It drains them.
I think the card's good. I'm not much lower than you. I like 5.5.
Honestly, just a 2 mana 2/1 flyer that's doing this gain and drain. I'm at a 6 already. The Offspring was just like a bonus I wasn't even really counting. I agree. The Offspring is probably the least impressive part about the card if you don't have the high synergies to take advantage of it. But I'm fine with it even without it.
Sure.
Next up, we have the Thorn Plate Infiltrator. 4 mana for a 4/3 with Offspring 3. When this creature enters, target opponent loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Makes them do it twice. It's got decent stats on its own. Yeah, this seems fine.
Nothing super exciting here, but certainly a playable card. It's like a 5.
I'm a little lower. 4.5. Like, I think it's about where I'm at the filler part, but not in love with it. Next up.
Thought Stalker Warlock. 2 and a black for a 2/2 Lizard Warlock with Menace. When this enters, choose target opponent. If they lost life this turn, they reveal their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, and they discard that card. Otherwise, they discard a card. So if they've lost life, it's Thoughtseize. Otherwise, they just get to discard whatever they want.
Okay.
I don't think this card's amazing, but it's probably pretty easy to have some sort of 2-drop that makes them lose life, and then you get to play this and Thoughtseize something from them and still have a body.
Yeah, it also has Menace, which is going to help activate on all of those other abilities for Rakdos. But this is, again, sort of a split card to me. It seems like more Rakdos than I'm willing to go for the average deck. So I'm going to say it's just a 4.
I think it's better than that. I think I have it as a 5. I think it'll still be pretty good in Orzhov if anything, loses them life. Or any deck that has any sort of cheap flyers or menace creatures.
All right. What was your rating?
5.
All right. Next up, Valley Rockcaller. 2 mana for a 1/3 menace Squirrel Warlock. Whenever Valley Rockcaller attacks, each opponent loses X and you gain X, where X is the number of other squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats you control? Excuse me? Shut up.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts.
Shut up. You did not. Oh, it's so good. I love it.
You do want to be wide, but that's not that hard.
It's not that hard when it's not that hard with it does squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats, which is every creature type in black. It's going to count literally everything.
I think this card's very good. Yeah, I don't know what to.
In the color pairs that overlap multiple times, it's going to be insane. I think this card's very good.
The fact that it has Menace means you'll probably be able to at least get multiple attacks in with it without it dying.
Get some chip damage in. A board stall, you just go wide with your squirrels and rats, and then you can just finish them off with the attack trigger. Oh, yes. I am super here for this card. For two, he dies easily, but for 2 mana, what do you expect? This is as high an impact 2-drop as you can ask for. So I think this is a 7.
That sounds about right.
All right, next up.
Wix Patrol, 4 black black, 6 mana for a 5/3 rat warlock. When it enters mill 3, when you do, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among cards in your graveyard.
What are we looking at?
Oh, you had it. It's the
They're flipped
apostrophe
around.
thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we did the Wix Patrol. I was like, that is not what I am seeing. Okay.
Yeah, I was looking.
No,
The card image gallery shows Wix Patrol first.
I'll just go back. It's fine. Mill 3 cards. Then I was like trying to follow along with you, and I lost it, so I couldn't do it. When you target creature opponent control, it gets -X, where X is the greatest value among cards in your graveyard. Oh, it's a 5/3 for 6. You're gonna get decent value on the -X/-X, so I guess I don't mind. It's just kind of a 2-for-1. 6.
It's expensive, but that's almost a good thing because it means there's going to be more stuff in your graveyard at the time, so you'll most likely be able to have a better hit on your X.
Agreed.
Well, so 6 works.
All right, next one we'll go back. It's the Wick, the World Mind. 4 mana for a 2/4. When it or another rat you control enters, create a 1/1 black snail creature token. If you don't control the snail, otherwise put a +1/+1 counter on the snail. What the hell is happening? I didn't notice the snails in the art until I read the card. Sacrifice a snail. It deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to each opponent. Then draw a card equal to its power. Whoa! Sack it. Draw a card. Hit you for 1. Make more. Oh my god, that's cool. But that's quite the mana cost you need to have.
It is, and we haven't seen anything yet to suggest that this is supporting a 3-color format.
Yeah, but like I would be okay to just splash just for this ability. It just depends on how many rats I have to like take advantage of that consistently. So I'm gonna mostly rate it just on the first ability because you have to assume that A, you have to be able to splash this color, and B, you have the backup rat support to make it worth splashing to begin with. So I don't think it's as relevant, but I think we're playing this card no matter what anyway. 4 mana for the 2/4 that then just makes a snail every time you play a rat. That snail gets bigger, and then when they finally kill it or you trade it, you make more snail. That's good. I'm into that.
Sure, I guess I'm probably happy if I most want this in rat, so I'm already blue-black. At which point, if I can find one, red source, especially there are a few. I took a quick look at the lands. There are a couple, like Hidden Grotto, pay 1 to add in 1 of any color type lands.
Yeah. Rating-wise, I think even if you aren't gung-ho able to make this insane, I still think it's very playable. I'm going to say it's like a 6 with the upside.
That seems right. There are going to be times where all it is a 4 mana 2/4 and a 1/1 if you just don't happen to draw more rats.
Yeah. I think it'll play like up to an 8 if you're in rats and can splash.
Definitely.
Okay, and that's it for the black cards. This one went a little bit longer. Yanks, what do you think about black?
Looks pretty good. A lot of really good removal. We had our first 10 plus a 9.5. Granted, both mythics, but there's some really good cards here.
All right, chat, let us know down below in the comments. What do you guys think of black? What do you think of Bloomburrow so far? Don't forget to go back and check out the introduction, and we will see you in the next video for red. Bye.